Hello everyone, and welcome back to the homestead. Today I want to talk to you about 5 plants that pretty much anybody can grow in the garden. If you're a total beginner, these are 5 things that you can plant. They're either readily available as starts, so you don't have to worry about starting the seeds on your own, or they take really easily direct sown in the ground. And when you plant these things, you can get a good harvest out of them. So we're going to talk about that. But before we do, I've got to do the chores for our animals, and while I do that, I'm just going to talk to you about some real quick house cleaning stuff, some small changes we're making to the channel for the next couple months, because things are a little nutty. So as some of you know right now, I'm working to organize the Homesteaders of New England Fall Gathering, and that's put a lot on my plate over the last couple weeks.
Camera the new shoes.
All right, go ahead, show them. Wow.
I'm trying to do it.
Do what?
Try to do it like this.
So the Homesteaders of New England gathering has been taking up a fair bit of my time. I found that getting 2 videos filmed and edited a week has been a little bit tricky. So for now until mid-September, I'm gonna film and edit 1 video a week. That's gonna go up on Friday mornings at 8:30 a.m. Eastern time, just like this one is. And if I have time to film and edit another video during the week, I will put that out just kind of whenever I can. So thank you to everyone that's been super understanding over the last couple weeks as we kind of sort through everything and get stuff figured out. Let's talk a little bit about the garden now. The topic of this video is going to be a little bit more entry level than some of the stuff we've talked about in the past. But we get a lot of messages from people that are very new to gardening and are looking for help. So in this video, I want to cover 5 things that you can grow and be fairly successful at with very little experience in the garden. And the first that we're going to talk about that you can see right behind me is squash. So squash is one of those vegetables that you can grow in your garden that takes on a multitude of forms. You've got a bunch of different varieties that you can plant that cater to different needs. You've got your summer squash varieties like zucchini and crookneck, or you've got your winter varieties like butternut and acorn squash and pumpkins. Then you've got varieties that don't even cater to something you eat, but things like a loofah, which is I guess technically a gourd, but I kind of group it in with squash. That's going to produce something that you can actually use on your homestead. It's going to make a sponge for you. We've done nothing with these squash but put down a solid layer of wood chips and aged chicken manure and then planted these squash and let them go. And while each variety that we have in this bed is performing a little bit differently, we're already getting food off this and we're just in the beginning of July right now. Now there are various pests that you're going to encounter with squash. Your biggest, at least here in the Northeast where we live, are squash borers. For us, we try to treat with as few pesticides as possible. So I try to be diligent. If I see a squash borer adult on the plant, I will try to kill it either by squashing it or catching it. Every once in a while, we will dust with some diatomaceous earth around the base of the plants, and that'll help to keep things in check. But you will lose plants every now and again to squash borers, and that's just something you kind of have to deal with. But by and large, squash are easy to grow. They'll adapt to many different soil types, and if you have any garden center near you, you're able to get starts for these in a variety of different types. The next plant that I want to talk about for this video is something that we've grown a lot of over the years and I really enjoy growing, and that's going to be our cabbages. So cabbages are a member of the Brassica family. These are your cold hardy leafy vegetables that you see. It includes cabbage, it includes kale, it includes broccoli, cauliflower. A lot of plants that are grown very easily here in New England because we have relatively cool growing seasons overall. I like cabbages personally because they're very versatile in the kitchen. You can cook them as they are. You can eat them raw in things like coleslaw. You can ferment them. You can pickle them. You can do all sorts of things with cabbage, and they're relatively easy to grow as long as you've got the weather and you keep an eye out for a few simple things. Cabbage grows above the soils, and the root to them Cabbage grows above the soil, and the roots are really good at digging into tougher substrates underneath. So your soil doesn't have to be great for growing cabbage, which is awesome. When these went into the ground, believe it or not, we didn't even acclimate them to the outside. We literally just took the seedlings, dumped them out here, and they looked like they were going to die for a good long time before they took off, and you can see kind of where we're at now. And as far as pests go, we've only had to do one application of a treatment called Spinosad, which is an organic pesticide that you can use for organic gardening. We had a small cutworm issue. We noticed that the leaves had a lot of holes in them, and it was starting to affect the inside where the head grows of the cabbage. We applied that one time, and that's it. We haven't had to apply anything else to these cabbages since. The nice thing about cabbage is if you've got a big family and you want a lot of cabbage, you can really let that head of cabbage grow and wait to harvest it. If you've got a smaller family, or you simply don't want as much cabbage to deal with at any given time, you can harvest these heads a little bit earlier. Check that out. And that'll be part of dinner tonight. The next one on the list is a little bit of a do as I say, not as I do, and I'm going to explain why. In our raised beds, we have an illness that lives in the soil, which doesn't allow us to really raise as many of these next ones as we want. However, even if you don't have raised beds, you can still raise these, and it's what we're doing this year. Of course, I'm talking about tomatoes. Now, any hardcore gardener loves growing tomatoes, and the reason why is pretty straightforward. The taste of a homegrown tomato is going to be leaps and bounds ahead of anything you'd be able to buy in the store. Short of going to a local farmer's market or having a friend that grows tomatoes, you're not going to be able to get this from the grocery store. And tomatoes are one of those plants that you don't need to have a garden for to grow effectively. They love being grown in containers. So effectively, you could go to any garden center, find pre-sprouted tomatoes, like tomato seedlings, 6 inches, a foot high, put them in a pot that you have at home, usually 12 inches across, with a high quality potting mix, and you're going to grow tomatoes well. They don't require a ton of maintenance. Tomatoes are fairly tolerant of infrequent watering. You may have some splitting issues down the line, but splitting issues just makes your tomatoes a little bit ugly. It doesn't make them inedible at all. Another nice thing about tomatoes is that there's so many varieties out there. There's something for you no matter what you like. We've got a larger yellow heirloom variety in the back. We've got I think this is an early girl right here. And then I don't even know what this one is that she's got going right over here. Truthfully, and this is going to sound weird, I don't like tomatoes personally. I don't eat them raw frequently. I do eat them once in a while. So it does feel a little hypocritical of me to tell you to, grow tomatoes, they're great. I like growing them. I don't necessarily like eating them all the time, but I do like growing them. And if you're into canning and preserving, you can take the paste tomatoes, the Romas, the San Marzanos, and those tomatoes are great for canning, making tomato sauce, and putting up for long-term storage. Fourth on the list of plants every beginning gardener should try to grow is something we don't have in the garden right now. We've actually already harvested this for the year, and that's garlic. You can see there's some pepper plants hanging out right here in the 4x4 raised bed where we do our garlic every year. And that's because we actually put our peppers in with the garlic because we know we're going to pull the garlic about this time, midsummer, early July, mid-July. But garlic is an excellent plant for newbie gardeners because it is highly pest resistant, and you actually plant it in the fall. We planted this whole bed with garlic last October, I believe, and we just harvested it the second week in July. And we didn't have to apply any pesticides to it. I didn't see any potential pests the entire time it was in the ground. And our harvest, well, let me show you. Just from that little 4 foot by 4 foot bed of garlic, we've got everything we're going to need for the entire year from a garlic standpoint. So you've got your garlic, which you can plant in the fall, which means you can start gardening now, even if you feel like it's too late. You can intersperse plant your peppers with your garlic come the springtime, because you're going to be pulling the garlic before the peppers are ready. And then once those peppers get picked and the plants are spent, you can replant garlic there and not really have any worry about pest pressure, which for beginning gardeners is pretty cool overall, which is why I like garlic. The last vegetable I'm going to recommend for new gardeners is something that we planted for the first time last year and did really well with. And we're trying a new method this year, and that is potatoes. Now, it's really easy to get seed potatoes from virtually any farm or garden center. You can buy them in 5-pound bags. You can cut them up with different eyes so that you're going to get more out of each potato. And then you plant them, they grow, they bloom, and eventually they die off, and then you harvest those potatoes by digging them out of the ground. With the way we planted our potatoes this year, they're in a tower where all we have to do is take this tower down, spread out the hay and compost that's in there, and we'll find the potatoes that are in there. The reason why I recommend planting them for beginner gardeners is that you will get an incredible harvest from potatoes based on not a lot of input and not a lot of work. A 5-pound bag of seed potatoes may only cost you $5 or $6, and you can turn 5 pounds of potatoes into 25, 30, even 40 pounds of potatoes when you go to harvest them in the fall. Now, they are a little space intensive if you plant them traditionally, but if you do them in this tower method like we're doing this year, you can actually get a lot of food out of a very small amount of space. And you do want to remember, oh, the sun just came out. It got real hot all of a sudden. And you do want to remember that potatoes are going to have a few more pests than some other run-of-the-mill beginner stuff that I've mentioned on this list. But if you're keeping an eye on your garden, you're keeping an eye out for pests, you're keeping an eye out for damage from pests, you can mitigate that pretty easily. But my favorite benefit about potatoes for the beginner gardener is not only that you get a big yield from not a lot of input, but potatoes store incredibly well. When you harvest these in the late summer and early fall, you can cure them, put them in your basement or a root cellar, and have potatoes for virtually the rest of the winter. So while a bumper crop of squash or cabbage or anything else might feel overwhelming, potatoes are one of those foods that, because they store so well, even if you end up with a ton, it's very easy to manage and you don't have to freak out that you're going to let things spoil. So there you have it. Those are the 5 crops that I recommend for beginner gardeners to try. If you have any thoughts of your own, I'd love to hear them. Throw them down in the comments below. If you're not already a subscriber of our channel and you want to see more about what we've got going on here on the homestead, make sure to hit that subscribe button. Otherwise, we thank you for watching and hope you're having a great day. Bye.